So with these corners, what are our starting questions here?
I mean, first off, how we feeling about the group, man? You know, we got to check in, you know.
I feel good about them. I really do.
10. How confident do you feel?
Probably 8-ish.
Okay.
I think Witherspoon keeps up what he was doing end of last year. I think Levi Wallace is a really solid cornerback too. Ooh, here's a good question, actually. Is Levi Wallace an upgrade for us over Joe Hayden last year? Because I think Akello is, if he keeps up what he was doing last year. Akello was on one. I really thought that.
Yeah, you know, you put more stock in the sample size than I do.
I'm just saying if
samples, yeah.
Hold on, if Akello does what he did, those last 5 or 6 weeks for the whole season this year, like that's a top 10 corner.
Yeah, but you know why it's not that many top 10 corners? Because most guys can't do it for that long. It's extremely hard to.
He's got the talent to do it, man. And it looks like he's got the mentality. At least he's got it straightened out here in Pittsburgh.
No, seriously,
I would like to think so.
Yeah, for me, I'm a wait and see guy. That's all.
What do you think of Wallace though versus Hayden?
I think it'd be comparable, but I think both of those guys, I think even Akello's in that same conversation. Like, I'd see the 5 games and I'm like, all right, I like the 5 games, but to me, I still need to see it for a longer period of time. You know what I mean? Because that's not going to cut it if we're talking about what his season was as a whole last year. Just taking that part, it was like, yeah, this was a great part of the season, but I need a full body of work if you're going to be cornerback 1, because that's the conversation. We're not asking, can Akello and Levi be cornerback number 2? We're like, yo, one of you guys are going to have to be CB 1. But we haven't really seen either of you guys put together cornerback 1 seasons from start to finish. So that's why it's like, do we got 2 number 2s? Or do we actually have a number 1? Honestly, the way I feel about our DBs, in a sense, when we're talking to Akello and Levi, is kind of how I feel about Deontay and Chase. It's like, man, we see the talent in both of you guys. We understand why we're optimistic about both of you guys in certain capacities, but we also can understand why we are, a little bit skeptical. We have some questions. When we think about Deontay, it's like, well, man, we know he's a Pro Bowler, but he had the drops. When I think of Akello, it's like, yo, he balled out at the end of the year, but where was that at the beginning part? When I think of Chase, it's like, man, Chase at times looked dominant, but could he do it consistently? Could he do it week in and week out? Mentally, where was he at? When I think of Levi Wallace, I'm like, man, you look good in times, man, especially when Trey White got, when he went hurt and stuff like that. But did I ever feel like you were playing to Tre'Davious White's level? I can't say that. And that's the part where I'm like, we got the optimism, but we still got some question marks. And I do think for me...
Oh, yeah, I think both of them just got to hold up throughout a whole season here.
Yeah, like I said, it's
in premier rules. Levi was... You could say that's a premier rule up in Buffalo, being the cornerback too. And he held his own these last couple seasons.
He definitely did, but that's the part for me where I'm like, are either one surefire number 1 corners? The way we feel about
we can't
Joe
say
Hayden,
that right now. No.
Right, and that was my whole thing. Like, the way we felt about Joe Hayden coming into some of these seasons, I don't feel like that about Akello or Levi just yet. So that's why for me, I'm like, could they match what he was doing? I'm willing to say that they could match what he was doing last year, but I don't know if they're going to surpass what we felt about Joe Hayden just yet until I see it for a full season.
Well, I'm talking about just his play last year.
Yeah.
Do you get what I'm saying? No, I'm not saying Joe Hayden at his peak with the Steelers. So, like, I think Akello...
How many games did Joe play in last year?
Yeah, he was banged up. He missed 5 or 6, right, in the middle of the season. So if Akello can just do what he did last year, week 13, I don't know. It was the last 5 or 6 weeks of the season. Right. If he could do that this year, I think that's an upgrade over Joe.
Okay.
Of what Joe gave us last year.
Okay.
Not Joe throughout his whole Steeler career. And if Levi Wallace can just kind of stay on his trajectory, I think he's an upgrade over Cam Sutton on the outside.
Okay.
And now we move Cam Sutton to the inside, which is what he's been playing for most of his time with the Steelers, and I think he's pretty good at. With Mollett, who... Yeah, he showed some things last year. Yeah. His only bad performance in my standpoint was that Bears game where they had the final drive and they just picked him apart. That was the only bad thing. But everything else, I thought he was good. So that's why I think our cornerbacks are going to be upgraded this year.
Yeah.
And they weren't terrible last year. They were terrible in spurts against some of the more high-powered offense. But I do think our pass rush was bad in those games. Our rush defense was bad. Like, we didn't really help our secondary out.
For me, when I think of our secondary, I don't think of our secondary against the averages. I think about them against the top tier talent, because to me, that's what it takes in some instances. And that's where I look at this group and I say, do we have a guy that can match up with those type of guys? I personally don't feel like we do just yet. I think you said you feel like we do in terms of Akello.
I think Akello could do it. Yeah.
I'm just not there just yet, man. I don't feel like he's proven that to that extent.
You're right. He's done it against some top tier receivers in the past. Like, he's locked up Mike Evans, but you're right. You just need to see it for a whole season. I get what you're saying.
Yeah, because like we said, one-offs are cool. Matchups are cool, but when you're talking about doing it week in and week out, or when we're talking about doing it as a cornerback one, where we might even say, hey, we want you to be able to match up with this caliber receiver over here and not have it look gory. We want to, not just be 50-50. You actually win some of these. I don't feel as confident with either one of those guys just yet, saying, hey, like how we would look at Joe and be like, yo, Joe's going to have this guy. We're good. We take care of the rest of this stuff. Like, I don't know if either one of those guys are capable of that just yet.
Yeah. You'd have to ask 49er fans this, but I would say maybe that was Akello's most consistent stretch in his NFL career, though, those last however many games. Because I think from what I heard whenever we signed, he was so much more up and down with the 49ers. I mean, they benched him going into the playoffs. So we'll see. I mean, you're right, 100% right. That's what we were talking about signing, like James Bradbury.
No, seriously, man. Absolutely.
You know what I mean? But if he could do that, man, Akello could be really good for us and at a huge value with that contract.
Yeah, no, without a doubt, man, without a doubt. But with that being the case, then
what's your number out of 10?
In terms of my confidence level, I'm 6.5, 7 max.
We're not too far off. I said 8ish.
Yeah. For me, man, like I said, 6.5, 7, mainly because I think with both of those guys, I feel really confident if they were cornerback number 2. Like if they were our second guy and we had a legit...
If we had Bradbury.
Yeah. If we had Brad, it's night and day. I'm over here like, yo, I feel 10-ish, feeling real great about the situation. But when you talk about having a number 2 and hoping that he could be a number 1, I think of Juju. Juju as a number 2 receiver, he thrived. When he was AB's Robin, he thrived. He looked great at times. But then when it was time for him to be the number 1 guy, we were like, whoa, this looks a little different here. The productivity is taking a hit. The separation is what we thought. Now he's not matching up against the second or third best corner. He's matching up against the number 1 corner, and it doesn't hit the same. That's my biggest concern when I'm thinking about Akello and Levi. I'm like, man, y'all have favorable matchups, and in some of these matchups, y'all dominated. Y'all look great. But there is a difference when we're talking about the caliber of players that you match up with when you are quote unquote cornerback 1 versus being the number 2 guy, or in some cases the number 3 guy. So that's why for me, like I said, I sit it at 6.5, 7 because they've shown flashes, but it's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of other variables that are going to go into how successful they're able to be coming into next season.
Yeah, we didn't get to see him in the Jamar Chase matchup last year.
Not at all, yeah.
That was the game, actually. Yeah, the Bengals away game where it was like, okay, it's time to put Akello in.
Yeah, I want to see
and that's what happens.
I'm ready to see him versus Amari Cooper.
Yeah, I forgot the Browns got him.
Yeah, that's going to be interesting to me, man. Trying to think. Baltimore, obviously Rashad Bateman, like just because he's young, man. But I mean,
the receivers are looking rough, bro.
To me, it's Bateman. That's the one. It's Bateman and then the tight ends. That's how they gonna roll, man. That's how they're gonna roll.
Who's their second guy?
No, that's what I'm saying. It's Bateman and Andrews. They
I legitimately is it Duvernay still? I don't even know there's like guys. I mean, there still are guys out there they could sign. I mean, they could flip in the snap of a finger.
But for them, man, they got their tight end. They got Mark Andrews. They got the receiver Rashad Bateman. That's how they running that offense, man. Everybody else is kind of like, all right, if you can give me 300 yards in the season, great. But I don't think they tripping on them other dudes, man.
Yeah, you got to think. We were playing Pierre a decent portion of that first half of the season. We shouldn't have to do that this year. And I think that I'm not taking a shot at Pierre or anything, but
think about Pierre as the 4th guy versus the number 2 guy.
Yeah, it's not terrible.
It's night and day.
That's not terrible. Yeah. And he was doing some of the 4th guy stuff, I thought, in that Bills game where he looked kind of good.
That's night and day.
Yeah.
Versus when you talk about putting him on number 1 receiver and it's like, hey, man, hold your own. It's a little different.
The thing I will say about Akello, whenever you bring up the Juju comparison, I think Akello just has more natural skill at his position than Juju.
Oh, wow. No. How do you determine that?
I guess I'm talking more upside. Like he has the 6'3"
The knock
frame,
on Juju is the speed.
The speed. Well, Akello's got all that for the cornerback position. Juju,
because I think Juju is a better catcher of the football than I think Akello is as a man cover guy.
Okay. So here's my point. I think Akello, at his best could be that cornerback one that we're talking about.
Okay.
Whereas Juju at his best, I think he's just an awesome slot receiver.
Okay.
I don't think he can be that wide receiver one.
Fair.
Like, what's his prototype is what I'm saying. In terms of being a receiver one.
I think his best case scenario would probably be like Anquan Bolden.
Okay.
A guy that physical as heck, knows how to run routes, doesn't create a ton of separation, but can dominate with combat catches. That's definitely Juju's game. Juju's not.
We didn't really have him doing that here.
Not at all. We had him trying to be a receiver that can create separation, all this other stuff, and it's like, that's not his game. Like, yo, let him be a big body receiver, but you got to have accuracy with that ball. You got to have a person that's going to ride and read with it. And we could see the rapport between him and Ben, and that's why it was like, man, we knew when he was out there that they were going to have their connection. Ben was going to be able to put the ball in certain places, and they would play that style of game with him. They just didn't do it enough. And that's, to me, how I think Juju, if you're talking about him as a number one receiver, that's the view. That's how I look at him. Like Anquan with the Cardinals and with the Ravens. Like that style.
You hear any of this noise about a Juju return? I mean, this is a far way away, but it's a far way away, but the blueprint's there. You know, we lose Deontay or Claypool.
Spin the block.
You know he'd want to. Who was it that called in and said, I think it was the last caller too from the last time we did call-ins.
Yeah.
He said, you saw Juju's face with the Chiefs.
He looks sad, bro.
Yeah. I guarantee he'd love to come back.
He definitely looks sad, bro.
Especially if we get something going a little bit here with Pickett. I could see it happening.
Right.
But I think it'll come down to the question we've been asking with Juju. At what price? That's what's going to happen again.
I mean, if he went out there for 2.
It was 3, right? 3.5?
I thought it was like 275 guaranteed though, right?
It might be. Yeah.
Well, and it could like escalate up to something more than that, but I thought it was only like 275 because that's when we looked at it and was like, well, dang, Steelers couldn't have turned you down that much if, and that's all you signed for. Yeah. Because he had the whole thing of, we wanted to be here, but when they tell you they don't want you, what you supposed to do? And we're like, bro, you ain't signed for that much. Like, yeah.
Well, we saw what we did with receivers in the draft. Maybe they were serious, though. We want to go a different direction. We got some dynamic dudes that can take the top off.
What did he sign for real quick, man?
If I had to take a guess, I think it's either 3 or 3.5.
See, I thought it was like 275.
Okay, you do that. And then next part of this, we're going to, should we sign someone at corner? So I'll pull those up on Spot Rack here.
Okay, yeah. 1 year, 325. 1.4 is what is guaranteed. Let me see.
Holy.
Yeah. So the way this deal is structured, 1 year, 3.25. He got 1.45 as a signing bonus. 2.4 is guaranteed. That's what it was. Yeah.
It doesn't say anything about incentives though, right? On Spot Rack.
No. The way it is like this. So he got 2.4 guaranteed at signing. He has a $250,000 workout bonus. He has a $150,000 roster bonus, and he had the $1.4 million signing bonus.
Didn't they say it could get higher than that though? Higher than the 3.25? I read it somewhere. Chiefs make playoffs. Chiefs make the AFC Championship.
Let's see. Contract notes. Per game active bonus, $30,000, so he can make another $500,000 that way. He has catch incentives, 40 receptions to get him a $500,000, 50 receptions to get him $1 million, 65 receptions, $1.5 million, yards incentives, 500 yards, he gets a $500,000, 650.
Yeah, that contract can go up.
Yeah, 900 yards, you get 1.5. Playing time bonuses, 45% of the snaps, $500,000, 65% of the snaps, 1.5. Got $1 million if he makes the Pro Bowl. Then if he plays 50% of the snaps and they win the AFC Championship game, $500,000, and then the exact same thing for if they win the Super Bowl, but he has to play 50% of the snaps as well.
That should go up.
Yeah,
those are very feasible.
That's what I'm thinking.
Because right now, he's the number 2.
No, yes, he's gonna
borderline number 1.
He's going to get fed too, bro.
Because it's Sky Moore and him, really, right?
He's gonna get fed, bro.
And they got Valdez Scantling. I can't believe the contract they gave him, but
it was Herman.
Yeah,
he's the other one that's out there.
Yeah, so Juju should hit some of those.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. All right, so